Okay, welcome everybody. Um, Tonight we're going to have a webinar on learning how to, uh, um, excuse me, I can't move that. We're going to learn how to do image editing for casino chips. And casino chips are round. Every good image editor lets you do rectangular crops, but only one I know of lets you do circle crops very easily. So we will spend some time doing that. First, before I actually show you the techniques that I use, what I'd like to do is go through a short presentation that shows you the equipment that I use and um, some of the things that you'll need in order to do this. So let's get started. So the required materials are you'll need a scanner, a computer, internet access, which I assume everybody has because you're on this call, and some image editing software. We will go into more details about all of these items. The first is a scanner, and I use a Epson 4490 photo scanner. It is not a new scanner. I've had it over 5 years. I paid around $100 for it, maybe $120 when it was new, and it has been an excellent scanner. You know, there are some that give you more features and higher resolution, but for what we're doing with casinos, chips, this is more than adequate. If you are looking for a scanner, the things that you should be looking for is one that has at least 4800 dpi optical resolution. Some of them use programmed zoom in, but you should at least have 4800 dpi optical resolution. There are two types of scanner technology, CCD and CIS. You should be using a CCD scanner. The CIS scanners don't have enough, um, capture enough colors to do a good job on casino chips. And when you see scans where orange comes out beige or doesn't do pastel colors correctly, that's because it was scanned on a CIS scanner. You'll typically see CIS technology in all-in-one printers, where it's a printer, fax machine, and scanner all in one. They're less expensive than CCD scanners, and that's because they don't capture as many colors. Um, and they're great for text, black and white, scanning, but not for casino chips, which are usually lots of different colors. Okay, so that's it on scanners. Um, I also, if I have to do very, very high resolution work, I'm a photographer. So I have some computer equipment, some photography equipment that I use if I want to get the very highest level of quality. And what I have is a Nikon digital camera, a um, a macro lens. Macro lenses let you get in real close to the chip and almost get a one-to-one image resolution for very high quality. The next item, right to the right of the lens, is called a copy stand. And the camera mounts onto the copy stand and the lens points down to the base where you put the casino chip, and the copy stand holds the camera perfectly still, perfectly level right over the top of the casino chip so there's absolutely no distortion. Uh, there are a pair of tabletop floodlights using carbon fluorescent lights. Um, so it's cool. They don't get hot. And I use two of them so they illuminate all around and eliminate the shadows. And then the final piece of equipment is a remote release so that You don't have to press the camera and cause some vibration. When you're taking the picture, the remote release does it electronically. So um, you get no camera shake and the image is perfect. So what I'd say is I rarely use this. Um, the scanner does a great job, and you really, if you want to do better than a scanner, you have to know what you're doing and have some expensive equipment to do it. So I recommend using a scanner, but if you're a photographer, that's what you'll need in order to get great images of chips. Sometimes you will find yourself in a casino and uh, you want to capture an image of a chip that you don't want to collect. Let's say they just issued a new $100 or $500 chip. You just want to take a picture of it there and then turn it into the cage, not have to take it home. Your camera on your smartphone will do a good job. You should find a flat level surface and put the chip on a contrasting background. So if it's a red chip, maybe you could get a white napkin, put it underneath the chip. You want a contrasting color because when you get to the image editing, you want to know where the chip stops and the background starts. So you can remove all the background when you do your cropping. You want to take the picture from directly above the chip and get in as close as possible. Make sure that you're using natural light, ambient light that's in the room with no glares, no flash. Even if it's the low light that you typically find in a casino, there'll be enough light to get a good shot of the chip. And if you want a better shot, find a place that's well lit. And then shoot your picture, take the picture, check the results, and if you don't like them, take it over again. But just make sure that you reduce the amount of distortion by taking the picture as um, directly above the chip and not from an angle on the side. Okay. Computers, I just recommend using a desktop and not a laptop because a bigger keyboard and a mouse rather than a touchpad is desired when you're doing image editing. Um, but, Mac or Windows, there are drivers for scanners and all the different peripherals that you'll need for both. So it really doesn't make a difference whatever you're comfortable with. Will work. Okay. Image editing software. I used Photoscape. And when we go to the demo, I will show you the features of Photoscape that makes it superior for doing circle crops. There are many good image editors. This is free. I know some people have tried to download it and have gotten buggy or virus infested versions of it. On the chip guide, on the submission page, there is a link to a virus-free version of this that you could download and use with complete safety. So that's what I recommend. You could have more expensive software, but it's not necessarily easier to do the image editing that we need to do for casino chips. Setting up the scanner. Um, you want to take a scan and not let the scanner help you take a better scan by some of the different features that it offers. If you look at the bottom of the screen where the cursor is, there's an unsharp mask filter, turn it off. Color restoration, turn it off the screen. We don't need those features. We just want to capture the image as is. We want the resolution to be at least 300 dpi, and if you've got a really good chip, high quality, maybe you want to crank it up to 600 dpi. Just know that the higher the resolution, the longer it's going to take to do the scan. So if your scanner does weird stuff, turn off all these buttons and just do a straight scan. Don't let the scanner try and help you because your scanner doesn't know what a casino chip is. It typically wants to copy photos, pages out of magazines or books. It's not been set up to do casino chips. How do you prepare the chip for a scan? Um, just know that if you have a dirty or worn chip, after you do a scan, it's going to look dirty or worn. So you might want to clean it if cleaning will improve the appearance of the chip, but you can't do anything about worn chips. The only time you should really scan worn chips for submission to the chip guide is if we don't have the chip and we don't know if chip's in any better condition. You should remove chips from any holders that they're in. Holders typically have some kind of plastic around them, even if it's the thinnest plastic. The worry is the scanner, when it scans the chip, it emits a light. Plastic will act like a mirror at certain angles and flash back into the scanner, and you'll have some white spots around where you're getting the flashback from the plastic. Put the chip on the scanner bed at least 1 inch from the edges, both the top edge and the side edge. And that's because the scanners try and help you by reducing the size of the scan so it's more manageable for you. But in doing so, they will crop off the edges of the chip if you put the chip right into the corner of the scanner. So move it at least 1 inch away. It's no problem if you do that. Align the chip as best as possible so that it's level. That'll make it easier to do the image editing later. And if possible, put a 18% gray card over the chip when you do the scan. The reason that you do that is image editing software understands the 18% gray card. And if you want to get the best possible color renditions, you tell the scanner that the background is you tell the image editing software, that the background is an 18% gray card, and then it adjusts the colors so that they're exactly perfect. The 18% gray cards are something that you'll find in a photography shop. They're cheap. It's a piece of cardboard. It may cost $1 or $2, but it can help you get the best possible results. And remind me later when I'm doing image editing, and I'll show you how that works. Okay, so what we're going to do is after we do a scan, we'll have something that looks like this, produced by the scanner. And what this session is going to do is how we get from that to here. And this would be something that would be ready to be submitted to the chip guide as is. And I'll explain, if you become proficient at image editing chips, you could contact me. I'll explain it later, but you can become a certified chip guide submitter. And if you do, you'll get preferential treatment. Your submissions will get preferential treatment. They'll take them before everybody else's because we know we won't have to do any image editing on your submissions. So it'll make the process a lot faster for us. And we will reward you then by moving you to the top of the queue. So image editing, what do we need to do? We need to do some image correction. That's if the lighting is bad. We need to align the chip so that it's level, do the circle crop, and then resize if it's perhaps too large. So what are those steps involved? Image correction, I will show you in the demonstration, but what we're doing there is we can remove some distortions that occur, and we can improve the lighting if the lighting is too bright or too dark. Okay, so we would first do image correction, and then the next thing we would do is we would align the chip. We look for alignment points someplace in the chip. a straight line, or horizons, some symmetrical features that are on either side of the chip that we could use to align. It takes some experience. This is the most artistic part of the process, figuring out how to make a chip perfectly level. Many times it's just best judgment, and in the right conditions, when you align the chip, text and images on the chip get a sharp image focus. It kind of pops when you get it perfectly level. So maybe we'll see that when we're going through this process. After you do the alignment and the chip is level, we want to do a circle crop. The circle crop removes everything that is not the chip, and that's the shadows and the background. And that's where Photoscape has a distinct advantage over the other software, and we'll see that. Sometimes there's a slight amount of distortion. The chip is not exactly perfectly round from the scanner. The scanner doesn't produce always a perfectly round chip from your chip, which is perfectly round. And that's because there's a light moving across the scanning bed, and that light causes a little bit of distortion. The distortion is typically within 1%, and we can correct for that. We'll show you when we do the demonstrations. And not to worry, it will not be noticeable at all. So don't worry if it's not perfectly round. And then we want to resize. When we resize, we want to make bigger things smaller. We never want to make small things bigger. If we do, the images become blurry and washed out. And there are some ways that I do it. It's an advanced technique, and maybe if we have some time, I'll show you how I do that. We used to, the administrators at the chip guide have to reduce the size of images, but I now enhance the chip guide so it automatically knows what size to make something based on what type of item it is. So we don't have to worry about that anymore. Okay, but those are the sizes that the chip guide now uses when an image is uploaded. If it's larger than those sizes, it'll make it smaller. But if it's smaller than those sizes, it will not make it larger. And then finally, once we've done that, we're ready to save it. And again, the save is done by the chip guide, so we don't need to worry about what format it's in or image quality. Chip guide, when the administrators submit the image, it makes the size correct and it saves it in the preferential format, which is a JPEG, with the correct image quality setting. The image quality setting reduces the size of the image without compromising the quality when viewing online. And you're probably wondering, how is it possible that you could reduce the size of an image without compromising quality? And that's because screens are typically something of around 75 dots per inch, 75 to 100 dots per inch. So anything larger than that is wasted. It's extra information that doesn't improve it. So if we remove that, it reduces the size of the image dramatically, and it doesn't compromise quality. If we are going to print that image on a printer, we want 300 dots per inch. That's where we would get a compromise in quality. Okay. So the summary of the presentation is image editing is not that difficult, and practice makes perfect, and I've practiced tens of thousands of times on chips. The required equipment is not equipment. Somebody wants to say something? The required equipment is not expensive, and the workflow, the way it goes, becomes routine and very quick. It typically takes me about a minute to do all those image editing steps that I showed you. Sometimes it takes a little longer if I have to correct some distortions, but generally a minute or two is how long it takes. All right, so that's the presentation. Now let's go to do some image editing. So this is a chip that was submitted to the chip guide, and we will do this first. And this is typically what we get. It's almost perfectly level. This minute did a good job. I don't need to do any image correction, so we skip that step. And the next step I want to do is the crop. Well, no, first I want to do the level. So this is Photoscape software. This is the free software that I told you about and will be using in this demonstration. So over here, there's a rotate arbitrary button. I press that, and that allows me to rotate the chip. So if I move it this way or this way, you see, and what I want to do is here, I'm looking at some lines going across here and how they fix on the chip. And as you see, it's only making a 1/10 of a degree correction to get it level. So the submitter did a great job in leveling it before they sent it. So I'm going to click OK. It's now level. And the next thing I want to do is crop. So there's a crop tab here. And there is a circle crop option that I'm going to click on. And I am going to make the image larger so it is easier for me to crop. And I always crop top to bottom, left to right. So I put the cursor at the top where I want to start the crop, and then I move it to the bottom where I want to end the crop. Then I move the anchor to the left side and the right side. And then I look around to see that I don't have any black shadows around the edge, and I've got the whole thing. I think I'm a little bit off here, maybe by a pellet two, and that looks good. Then what I do is I look down over here. Over here it tells me that this was the size of the original image, this square, the whole thing, and this is the size of the crop. And this feature right here is what makes Photoscape superior to the other image editing software, because it tells you how big the crop is going to be before you do it. With the other ones, even with the very expensive Photoshop, it only tells you after you do the crop. So if you don't go do it right, you've got to undo it and redo it until you get it right. So this is telling me that I'm not a perfect circle, that the height is 4 pels too large. And if I look at it, you know what? I agree. This, the top borders look bigger than the bottom borders, and I see some white over there. So I'm going to move it up a couple there and move it down a couple there. I'm off by 1, and I think I might be short there by 1. And now I look and I see that the width is 305. The height is 305. I've got a perfect circle. That's exactly what I want. And I click on crop. And now I have my circle. As far as the lighting, this yellow looks pretty good. I think it was a good exposure, and I'm not going to change the lighting at all. I'm done with this, and I click Save. So let's do it again for the other side. The other side is not as level as the first side. So again, the first thing I'm going to do is rotate arbitrary. And there are actually 2 tabs here. The first one is called Level Off, and that will handle um, um, angles up to 15 degrees. If it's over 15 degrees, I have to go to the Rotate button, and that lets me do full 360 degrees, 180 in each direction. So this is only a small level off. It needs 1.55, It looks good, maybe a little bit more. Okay, that looks good. That 5 is what I'm using for the alignment, and the top of this looks level. So I'm going to click OK, and then the next thing I want to do is my crop, and I start at the top, go to the bottom, go to the left side, and go to the right side. I like to go past a little bit so that I could come back and see where the background disappears and I only have chip. Looking down, couple too much. I look around, no black borders. I'm 313, 313. It's good. I click crop. The color is good and I hit save. And that's how easy it is. So for the standard ones, it goes very quickly like that. I think in the chipboard post, I said, how do you take something that looks like this and turn it into this? So since I said we do it, let's do it. Now, when I look at this, I can see that it's wider this way than it is taller. So the first thing I'm going to do in this case, because I'm working with distortion, is I want to do the crop first. So I'm going to go to the top, go to the bottom, go to the left side, and go to the right side. Get rid of all the background. Look around, it looks okay. And I'm not going to worry about it being equal. I know it's not equal, it's distorted. So what I do is crop, and then there is an image resize button. When I press that, and then I unclick preserve aspect ratio, because I want to remove the distortion. The way I remove the distortion is I make the larger number, the width, the same size as the height. So now they're both 428. I hit OK, and now I have my circle. What's left to do is now level it. So I click on level off, and I see that I need 5.25, but when I rotate 5.25, it takes it off the screen. So the trick is to go to the rotate tab, click minus, no, just 525, and it rotates it that amount. I hit OK. Now I have my level chip. It's round. And the only thing I'm looking at here is I know the center is white and it looks gray. This is white. And this center inlay should be the same color. So here's where I'm going to do some lighting correction. I'm not changing the colors, I'm changing the lighting. Okay, the colors are going to get brighter or darker, no doubt, but it's only because I'm changing the lighting. So what I want to do is, that's a little bit too light, and I usually like this deepen because it deepens the colors, it makes them look more natural the way they were. That might be a little bit too much. And I just play around with it until I get something I know looks as natural as I'm going to be able to get it. And I think that's about it. I don't think I could get it any better than that. It's a worn chip. I'm not really sure of what the actual colors are. They're not the same as they originally were, but I think that's the best I'm going to do. So I'm going to hit OK and save, and that's how I go from a distorted image to a round image. And that looks pretty much like there never was any distortion in that image. I think I have another one to do. Okay, yeah, let's do this. It's a little bit different because it's a black chip. Black chips, they're harder to get the borders, so I'll show you how we do that. Is it level? I don't think it is level. So the first thing I'm going to do is level it off. And I think this is one of those examples where I said all of a sudden everything pops when it's aligned properly and the colors look more vibrant and everything. So I just went right to this. It looks like it's lined up properly and everything looks good. So I'm going to hit OK. Next thing I want to do is crop, and I will move it to the top. And now I don't want to get the side, I only want the top. So I could see the side at the bottom is gray and the insert on the top side is white. So I stop right there. And I'm doing the same thing, looking at where it goes from orange to a darker color on the side. And I do it again over here. And that looks pretty good. I look down here, the width is still bigger than the sides. I think it's a little bit bigger over here. Move it in a little bit. That looks good. This actually looks a little bit short over here. So looking at the inserts look like they're now the right size, but the width and the height are off a little bit. So this was obviously taken with a camera and not a scanner, which is why there's that much distortion in it. So I'll crop it and then I will resize it to make it round. So I unclick preserve aspect ratio. I make the top the same size as the bottom, the smaller number. And now I've got a perfectly round chip. It does look like it's a little bit too dark. What happens if I lightened it a little bit? Does that look more natural? It looks like I'll just do one deepen, two deepens. That looks really good. Okay, so then I do a save and the image is saved. And that is basically what we do. Um, but every once in a while, we will get somebody who submits a chip like this. And if you look at this chip, you see that it's obviously distorted. It was taken from below the chip, not from directly towards the center of the chip. It was taken so closer to the left side than the right side because you can see uh, that distortion. It's bigger over here than it is over here. But I could correct and also note that the holder is blocking some of the chip. I can remove all this distortion, remove these holders, and get a chip that's good enough to submit to the chip guide. So how do we do that? This is a little bit the advanced topic. So what I'm first going to do is I want to get this to be a more manageable size. And I'm going to, well, let's do a square crop and remove the bottom of this. It'll make it easier to work. The next thing I know is this now looks like an oval, and I think the longest axis is in this direction and the shortest axis is in this direction over here. So when I do my circle crop, it does circles and ovals, but it won't do an odd shape like this. So to make this into an oval that I could crop, what I need to do is rotate it so that the longest axis is either horizontal or vertical. So let's do that. Let's go to um, Okay, let's go to the rotate, and I want to rotate it so that it looks like a oval with the longest axis. This way you see it goes off the sides. There's a little button over here that says, or a checkbox, keep the original size. I'm going to uncheck it so I don't get cut off. So I'm going to try this, and I might need, if it doesn't work right, I might need to make some adjustments. This is a, artistic hit or miss operation. And the way I'll check it is if I do the round crop, and there's some white around the edges. Okay, so this lined up very well. This to me looks like the way that I wanted it to be. Okay, I don't see any white or dark black, maybe a little bit more over here. Okay, I'm going to hit crop now. So that was the first step. The next step is I want to make this round. So I go to resize, I unclick preserve aspect ratio, I make the larger number the same as the smaller number, click OK, and now I have a round chip. Next thing I need to do is I need to level this. So I'm going to go to rotate, and I may need to do this twice because I have to do a big one. And that looks about right, maybe a little bit too much this way. Come back one. Okay. And the way I'll check it is I will do the level off function. I will look at the top and the sides. I think it needs a teensy more, 0.15. And now I have a round chip, and it looks like there was never any distortion, but I still have these two marks where the holder was in front of the chip. How do I remove those? If you go to the Tools tab over here, there is a tool called Clone Stamp. What Clone Stamp does is it takes a portion of a picture that I specify by clicking on that portion and copies it over to another part of the chip. So by doing that, I'm effectively erasing what was there and replacing it with something that it should be. And I did it there, and I need to do it over here as well. Now notice I went beyond the border of the chip. That is no problem whatsoever because all I do is I go back and I crop it again. And now I have my chip. It's round. I removed the holders. I removed the distortion. The color looks pretty good. I might be able to make it a little brighter. Like that. Oh, that looks perfect. And I hit save. Looking at the gold hot stamp, that looks gold. That's exactly how I want it. When we get to the chip guide, it'll be that size. And I save it. That is then the chip as it would appear on the chip guide. So we started with a crazy distorted chip, and now we have a perfectly round chip, and we didn't need to use any fancy software. We did it with free software. So at this time, I'm going to unmute everybody and ask if there are any questions because I've shown you everything that I wanted to show you, and we have 5 minutes left before uh, the meeting's going to end. Any questions? Anybody? You're all unmuted, so. All right then. There was a question, where can I find an 18% gray card? You could go on eBay. I'm sure they're for sale there. Any camera shop will have them, and that's where you would get it. Okay. So, Alan, that's the answer to that. James, did you have a question?
I was just going to say thank you, Charles. That was outstanding.
Okay, I appreciate that. And what I'm going to do is the presentation that I showed you, I'm going to send it to everybody who's on the call. So you'll have that
Thank you.
information. Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Charles.
All right. So thanks everybody for joining me. And this was recorded, so it'll be on YouTube as soon as it's finished processing what it needs to do to make it into a video. All right.
Very good. We
Okay.
appreciate it. We
Okay.
appreciate it.
Good night,
Thank you.
everybody.
Good night, Charles.